Morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything Media Network. Founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Now here we are on page 450 something. Yesterday we did Enlightenment Ideas Spread, a quick summary, very quick, 20 seconds. Challenge of New Ideas was censorship with salons where people would discuss ideas, the Enlightenment despots, which interesting thing, these are royalty, and listen to it over here to hear about those enlightened despots or royalty that helped the movement along. Arts and literature, some music. Hey, that's the title of the video, something about music. There's other stuff. Lives of the majority. And so you'll hear how people were living back then. Now, for today, Britain at mid-century. Britain at mid-century for today. I'm going to read this currently. Here we are. Setting the scene. Supporters of mercantilism found success in England. In the mid-1600s, a mercantilist wrote, "Foreign trade is the honor of the kingdom, the noble profession of the merchant, the means of our treasure, the sinews of our wars, the terror of our enemies." Over the next century, Britain embraced mercantilism and built colonial and commercial empire that reached around the world. At the same time, Britain developed a constitutional monarchy, a political system somewhere between the absolute monarchies of Europe and later democracies. Rise to global power. This is the heading. Oh, I have good sunglasses for this outfit. I'll be right back. If you're interested in the sunglasses choice that I'm about to wear, please like and subscribe. I'm telling you, you're gonna love it. Just give me 1 second. Oh, these are nice. Rise to global power. Why did Britain, a small island kingdom on the edge of Europe, rise to global prominence in the 1700s? Here, we look at a few reasons for the nation's success. Geography. Subheading 1. Location placed England in a position to control trading during the Renaissance. In the 1500s and 1600s, English merchants sent ships across the world's oceans and planted outposts in the West Indies, North America, and India. From these tiny settlements, England would build a global empire. Success in war. In the 1700s, Britain was generally on the winning side of Europe's conflicts. Each victory brought valuable rewards. With Treaty of Utrecht, France gave Britain Nova Scotia and Newfoundland in North America. Britain also monopolized the slave trade in Spanish America. Britain also monopolized the slave trade in Spanish America. The slave trade brought enormous wealth to British merchants, who invested their profits in other ventures. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended the French and Indian War, and the 7 Years' War brought Britain all of French Canada. The British East India Company was pushed oh my goodness, I'm having a hard time reading. Part of the reason why I'm doing this textbook reading is to build my context for history, right? Establish the channel. Also, to get better at reading. Clearly, I have work to do. Here we are, doing that work, and thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe if you're still here. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War, brought Britain all of French Canada. The British East India Company was also pushed the French out of India. Unlike its European rivals, Britain had no large standing army. Instead, it built up its fleet. In 1763, Britain had developed a more powerful navy than its greatest rival, France. With superior naval power, it could protect its global empire and trade. A favorable business climate. England offered a more favorable climate to business and commerce than did its European rivals. Although England followed mercantilist policies, it put fewer restrictions on trade than France. Also, while British nobles, like most other nobles in Europe, looked down on trade, some did engage in business activities. Union with Scotland. I like Scotland. At home, England expanded by merging with its neighbor, Scotland. In 1707, the Act of Union joined the two countries in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. In the United Kingdom, it also included Wales. The Union brought economic advantages to both lands. Free trade between the two created larger markets for farmers and manufacturers. Many Scots, however, resented the Union. On two occasions, they supported the claims of the Stuart princes who sought to regain the British throne. Eventually, though, showing prosperity made the Union more acceptable. England had controlled Ireland since the 1100s. In the 1600s, English rulers tried to subdue Catholic Ireland by sending Protestants from England and Scotland to settle there. They gave Protestant settlers titles like Irish... Okay, I have to reread this. This is so bad. I'm doing such a bad job reading, it's crazy. Nope, gonna continue. The Irish fiercely resisted Protestant rule. Uprisings led to increased repression. Catholics were forbidden to own weapons and marry non-Catholics or teach. So, I went to Ireland a few years ago, and when I got off the plane, I think it's called customs, where they ask you a few questions about, what are you doing here? You get off the plane, you go in the line, and you get up to the person, they say, check your thing, and what are you doing here? I say, I'm visiting the United Kingdom. And the lady said to me, I landed in Dublin, which is in the Republic of Ireland. She said, this is not the United Kingdom. Don't say that again. And I said, oh. And then I realized what Northern Ireland is, and then I went to Belfast and saw that whole thing. Very interesting. Ireland. Growth of constitutional government. Oh, perfect. New heading. Growth of constitutional government. In the century following the Glorious Revolution, 3 new political institutions arose in Britain. Political parties, the cabinet, and the office of the prime minister. The appearance of these institutions was part of the evolution of Britain's constitutional government. That is, a government whose power is defined and limited by law. The British Constitution is not a single document. Instead, it consists of all acts of Parliament over the centuries. It also includes documents such as the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, as well as unwritten traditions that protect citizens' rights. Unwritten traditions. That seems like something they should write. Political parties. 2 political parties emerged in England in the late 1600s. Tories and Whigs. I think Tories is for Victoria. I'm guessing. Tories were generally landed aristocrats, meaning they own land. who sought to preserve older traditions. They supported broad royal power and dominant Anglican Church. Whigs backed their policies of the Glorious Revolution. They were more likely to reflect urban business interests, support religious toleration, and favor Parliament over the Crown. These early political parties were unlike the party organizations that we know today. They represented exclusive social circles among rich, powerful men in Parliament. The modern political party, which represents groups of voters and has a distinct platform, did not appear until the 1800s. The cabinet system. The cabinet, another new feature of government, evolved in the 1700s after the British throne was inherited by a German Protestant prince. George I spoke no English and relied on the leaders of Parliament to help him rule. What? Under George I, his German-born son, George II, a handful of parliamentary advisors set policy. They were called the cabinet because they met in a small room, or a cabinet. In time, the cabinet gained official status. It was made up of leaders of majority party of the House of Commons. The cabinet remained in power so long as it enjoyed the support of the Commons. The House of Commons, I would assume, is something like the Senate or the House in the United States. That's why I'm reading this book. The cabinet remained in power as long as that. If the Commons voted against the cabinet decision, the cabinet resigned. This cabinet system, also called the parliamentary system, was later adopted by other countries. The Prime Minister. Heading the cabinet was the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was the leader of the majority party in Parliament, and in time the chief official of British government. From 1721 to 1742, the able Whig leader Robert Walpole molded the cabinet into a unified body, requiring all members to agree on major issues. Although the title was not yet used, Walpole is often called Britain's first prime minister. Politics and society. New heading. The age of Walpole was a time of peace and prosperity. But even as Parliament and the cabinet assumed new powers, British government was far from democratic. Rather, it was oligarchic, a government in which the ruling power belongs to a few people. Oligarchic. In Britain, as on the continent, landowning aristocrats were seen as natural ruling class. The highest nobles held seats in the House of Lords. Other wealthy landowners and rich business leaders in the cities controlled elections in the House of Commons. The right to vote was limited to relatively few male property owners, and their votes were bought openly. The lives of most people contrast sharply with those of the ruling elite. The majority made a meager living from the land. In the 1700s, even that poor existence was threatened. Wealthy landowners bought up farms and took over common lands, evicting tenants from small landowners. Many landless families drifted into towns, where they faced a harsh existence. A small but growing middle class included successful merchants and manufacturers. They controlled affairs in the town and cities. Some improved their social standing by marrying into landed gentry, meaning land-owning men? Is that what gentry is? Gentlemen? The men? Guessing. Context clues. Educated guessing. Could be wrong. Where am I? Oh. The middle class also produced talented inventors and entrepreneurs who helped usher in the Industrial Revolution. As we're approaching the end here, I'm going to take the glasses off for a final heading, which is titled, George III Reasserts Royal Power. George I didn't speak English? He was the king? How strange. George III reasserts royal power. In 1760, George III began a 60-year reign. Unlike his father and grandfather, the new king was born in England. He spoke English and loved Britain, but George was eager to recover the power the crown had lost. Following his mother's advice, George, be a king. He set out to reassert royal power. He wanted to end Whig domination, choose his own ministries, dissolve the cabinet system, and make Parliament follow his will. Personal rule. Gradually, George found seats in Parliament for the king's friends. The king's friends. Then, with their help, he began to assert his leadership. Many of his policies, however, would prove disastrous. After the 7 Years' War, George and his advisors decided that English colonists in North America must pay the costs of their own defense. When colonists protested, Parliament passed harsh measures to force them to obey. In 1775, now it's going to start to get hairy, these and other conflicts triggered the American Revolution, which ended in a loss for Britain. And finally, cabinet rule restored. Britain's loss of its American colonies discredited the king. Increasingly, too, he suffered from bouts of mental illness. In the crisis of leadership that followed, cabinet rule was restored in 1788. In the decades ahead, revolution engulfed France, and Napoleon Bonaparte's armies stormed across Europe, dragging Britain into long wars. During that time, the cabinet controlled the government. The British came to see Prime Minister as their real political leader. Got a little Australian at the end there. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy the weather, because here in New Jersey, it's simply divine. God bless. Goodbye.